You really think your name's ever going to be in something like this? My uncle slid the magazine across the table and laughed. Someone muttered, "She can barely keep her lights on." The whole table erupted. I went quiet. That was the last time they laughed at me like that, because 18 months later, my name was on something bigger than that magazine. And they all saw it. My name is Lucia. I'm 36 years old. I grew up in San Antonio in a working-class house where my mom cleaned office buildings at night, and my dad drove delivery trucks before the sun came up. First-generation Latina American. And from as far back as I can remember, I was always the one the family quietly gave up on. They called me the unreliable dreamer. I studied business design at community college, never finished because the money ran out. Spent my 20s bouncing between admin contracts, a failed small business attempt that cost me everything I had saved, and a stretch of real financial hardship that my family referenced like a cautionary tale at every holiday dinner. I was the cautionary tale, but here's what nobody ever gave me credit for. I wasn't polished. I didn't have a degree on the wall or a title on a business card. I had something else entirely. I knew how to build something from nothing. I had done it over and over in ways nobody ever noticed, because they had already made up their minds about me. They called it delusion. I called it a plan. If you've ever been the underdog in your own family, not just strangers, not to people who don't know you, but to the people sitting at your dinner table, then you already understand exactly what I'm talking about. Have you ever had someone who was supposed to believe in you laugh at you instead? Not a critic, not a stranger online, someone who watched you grow up. That specific sting, that is what this story is about. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And click like if you're already on Lucia's side. My older brother Dario announced he was launching a small real estate investment group. And within 2 weeks, the whole family rallied around him like he had just discovered fire. My aunts were investing, my cousins were sharing his business cards, my parents were talking about him at every meal with a kind of pride they reserved for things they believed in completely. It was beautiful to watch, honestly, and it burned. I had been quietly studying property contracts and market trends for 2 years by then. I had a pitch deck on my laptop that I've revised probably 40 times in my apartment after long admin shifts. So I asked Dario if I could be involved. I kept my voice steady. I waited for him to look up from his phone. He looked up. Then he looked at the rest of the family seated around the living room. And he said, "Lucia, come on. The last thing I need is someone who couldn't even finish school handling contracts worth 6 figures. I need people who know what they're doing." My aunt nodded slowly and added, "Mija, maybe just support from the sidelines." "Okay." Someone physically handed me a serving dish and redirected me toward the kitchen. No raised voices, no dramatic moment, just a clean, quiet, wordless dismissal. I smiled. I helped in the kitchen, and then I went home. That same night at 11:47 p.m., I got an email. A mid-sized regional development firm I had cold-pitched 3 months earlier, with no connections, no introduction. Just a proposal I had written alone. They wanted to schedule a second meeting about my community revitalization concept. I sat there in my small apartment, takeout on the counter, a box fan humming in the corner, and I stared at the screen for a long time. While they were building their dream with the family's blessing and each other's money, I was quietly building mine alone. And nobody knew. 3 weeks later, I found out there was a family WhatsApp group for Dario's investment circle. I was not in it. I found out through a cousin who accidentally mentioned a family investor dinner, a real dinner with wine and a printed agenda, one that I had not been invited to and had not been told about. I asked my mom about it. She shifted in her seat and said, "They just thought it might stress you out, Mija." She couldn't quite meet my eyes when she said it. I logged off the call and went back to my laptop. At my cousin's birthday party the following month, a family friend asked me what I did for work. I opened my mouth. Dario cut me off mid-breath. "She does a little of this, a little of that, you know how it is." The table laughed. I let it settle, then I said quietly, "I work in property development." Dario raised an eyebrow. "Since when?" And he smiled in that particular way that wasn't really a smile. I held eye contact. I didn't flinch. I changed the subject, but I didn't forget it. Every time they dismissed me, I got quieter. And the quieter I got, the harder I worked. That became a kind of rhythm for me. Their noise was my signal. The third one came from my mom. She pulled me aside, with genuine love in her voice, which somehow made it worse, and told me she thought I should be realistic. She suggested I ask Dario if there was maybe a small admin role I could fill in his group, something to stay connected to the project. As she spoke, I started to understand that this wasn't just her talking. The family had been having conversations about me behind closed doors. They had looked at all the evidence available to them and reached a conclusion. They didn't just doubt me. They had made a decision about me, together. I cried that night. One night in my apartment, sitting on the floor with my back against the couch. Then I woke up the next morning and sent the development firm a revised 14-page proposal with updated comps and a revised timeline. What they didn't know was that for the past 8 months, I had been working under a consulting alias on 2 small commercial property projects in a neighboring city. No family name, no borrowed connections, just my work, filed under a business name I had created, professional and clean and completely invisible to anyone who knew me personally. The development firm's interest in my revitalization concept wasn't random. They had seen notes on one of those anonymous projects through an industry listing. They had tracked the work backward to the pitch I sent them. The contract they now wanted to discuss had my real name on it, for the first time, and it was for a project 3 times larger than anything Dario was putting together. I hadn't told anyone. Not my mom, not a single cousin. I thought about it. I thought about walking into a family dinner and setting the proposal on the table. But then I remembered the kitchen. The magazine. The dinner I hadn't been invited to. The group chat that apparently everyone was in except me, and I decided they could find out the way everyone else would. They built their dream with the family's applause. I built mine in silence. And silence, it turns out, was my greatest advantage. I want to tell you about Renata. She was 58 years old when I met her at a community business workshop 3 years before any of this happened. She was a commercial property consultant, sharp and unhurried, and she said something to me after the workshop that I never forgot. She looked at me and said, "You think differently than most people in this room. That's rare. Don't let anyone flatten that out of you." Renata had been quietly advising me through the anonymous projects, reviewing contracts, coaching me on how to present in a room full of people who expected me to defer, connecting me to a regional developer network that I could not have accessed on my own. She was the only person on earth who knew the full picture of what I had built. Meanwhile, Dario's investment group received a small mention in a neighborhood newsletter, 2 paragraphs, a photo, and a quote. The family treated it like a front-page story. They threw a dinner. They invited me, purely as an audience member. Dario stood up to make a toast. He looked around the table, and he said, "To the ones who had the courage to actually do something." His eyes moved briefly to me when he said it. I raised my glass. I smiled. I said nothing. Later that week, Renata called me. "The contract's almost ready to go public, through the firm's announcement. Once it's filed, your name's on record. Anyone can find it." I nodded into the phone. "Good," I said. "Let them find it." The regional development firm issued a formal press release and filed the contract publicly. Lucia Vargas, listed as lead concept consultant on a $2.3 million community revitalization project covering a 4-block stretch in a growing district. The reveal didn't come from me. A colleague of Dario's from the investment group saw the filing, recognized the last name, and texted him a screenshot with the message, "Hey, isn't this your sister?" Dario stared at his phone, called his business partner, then called my mother. And within 2 hours, my phone started buzzing. Dario called first. "Why didn't you tell us? We could have. This should have been a family thing, Lucia." I let a beat pass. A family thing? Like the group chat? Like the dinner I didn't know about? That was different. You told me I didn't know what I was doing. In front of everyone. And then you all decided together that I should stay on the sidelines. So I stayed on the sidelines, Dario. I just built something there. Silence on the line. My aunt called to say she always believed in me. I was polite. I was brief. I was completely unmoved. My mother called crying, pride and guilt wrapped together so tightly I couldn't separate them. "Mija, why didn't you tell me?" I took a breath. "Because I needed to know I could do it without anyone's permission, Mama." After the storm of calls, I phoned Renata. She let me talk for a minute, then she asked simply, "How does it feel?" I thought about it honestly. "Quieter than I expected," I said. She laughed softly. "That's what real looks like." The firm invited me to the formal contract signing. I went to a department store and bought a simple blazer. Nothing flashy, no performance, no announcement to the family. I sat down at the table, clicked the pen, and signed my full legal name clearly on the line. Lucia Vargas. That was enough. The dynamic in my family shifted after that, permanently. They speak to me differently now, carefully, with a new kind of respect that doesn't quite fit yet. like a new pair of shoes that still needs breaking in. Dario's investment group stalled 6 months later due to internal disagreements. He never asked me for help. I never offered it. I used the credibility from that contract to launch my own small property consulting firm under my real name. No alias this time. Renata became a formal business partner. And I put a framed copy of that signed contract on the wall of my office where I can see it every morning. Here's what I want to leave you with. They said I'd never be successful. And for a long time, I let that live in my chest like a stone. But here's what I finally figured out. The people who count you out the earliest are just showing you who they are. They're not showing you who you are. That part was always yours to decide. If someone in your family has ever looked at your dream and laughed, this story was made for you. There's a specific kind of pain that comes from being dismissed by the people who are supposed to know you best, supposed to be in your corner. We see that. Tell us in the comments, what did someone say you'd never do? And did you prove them wrong? We want to read every single one. Click like to help this story reach the people who need it. If Lucia's story stayed with you, don't let it scroll away. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. These are real moments, real people, real turns. And sometimes the quietest person in the room is writing the biggest chapter. Stay with us. The next story is already waiting.